Hi, guys. We are going to take a look at a few examples of argument, and I'm going to show you how they're graded. And then after I show you a few samples, I'm going to see if you can spot the good examples and the medium examples and the weak examples. And you're going to have some points involved here. So let's make sure that you are really paying attention. So I made it a little bit bigger here so that it's easier to see. Oh boy, the computer does not like changing the formatting. Well, the camera is going, so yeah, oh well. Okay, he doesn't like Antinos. That was one of the claims that you guys turned in. Now, we have three possibilities. We could say this is amazing, excellent, and that would be the top score. The correct score is only 1 point or 2 points below that typically, and so a correct score is still going to get an A, but it means it's just not as interesting or polished or powerful. Or we could say that that is incorrect. So we have high, medium, low, or we have high, medium, high, or yeah, you were wrong. Or we have 0 for it's just missing. Clearly, it's not missing because I've copied and pasted in here. So he just doesn't like Antinos. Is that awesome, correct, or wrong? Well, it's not awesome. It's not interesting enough. It doesn't give that really specific how or why. So I would say that this one is correct. So going on to the next one. Poseidon is one of the more vengeful gods. Well, it's not missing, and it does have an opinion in there, so it's not wrong. So now we're left between awesome or correct. This one I'm a little more torn on, but in the end, I think it basically comes down to just Poseidon is vengeful, which is not that interesting or that debatable. So I would say that this is correct. Okay, the next one. The way Penelope deals with suitors is smart. Okay, well, now this is a little bit different. We don't just have Penelope as smart. We have a specific how she's smart or why she's smart. And that is that she's smart in the way that she deals with suitors. So I kind of like this one a little bit more. I think this one I would probably give excelling. So let's see let's do one more and then I'll turn you loose and you will have to identify. So Athena is a very strong and cunning person. Oh, okay. This I'm a little stuck on. I seem to have two opinions here. Strong is one thing. So strong, I would expect either mentally strong or physically strong. Well, she's both, and I could come up with evidence for that. But that's slightly different than saying she's cunning. Those are two different claims here. This person might save it on the evidence because they might be focusing on mental strength and defining that as intelligence. So they might save it later. But off the top of my head, I would say this one is possibly incorrect. So let's see how you do. Penelope is prudent. How are you going to rank that? Excellent, correct, or wrong? Yeah, it's not powerful enough to be excellent. I don't have anything really interesting there about how she's prudent or why she's prudent, but I do have a solid she's prudent, so that would be correct. Okay, Odysseus lets his pride get the best of him. What do you think? Yeah, again, basically it's saying Odysseus is prideful, so I don't think it's excelling. It's not giving me a how or a why, saying, Odysseus's pride is what causes his problems. And then I would be saying, okay, it's saying, how it affects his life. Odysseus's pride is so great that it overshines, it undoes his intelligence. then I would say, okay, that's great. But as it is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's correct. It's going to get, I think it's 6 point out of 7. And you don't have to earn every single point on an argument. In fact, if you earn every single point and are excelling across the board, that's actually extra credit. But I would say this is correct. Okay, next one. Antinos does not take responsibility for his disrespectful actions towards Penelope and her home. What do you think? High, medium, low? Yeah, this is pretty much a classic high. So we have that does not take responsibility. That would be correct. But then you have this added how or why. Why do you say he does not take responsibility? Because of his disrespect towards Penelope and her home. So that's the difference between being correct and being really excelling. So now let's take a look at some evidence. Now, here's the trick. I have not polled the opinion. If evidence is really, truly, absolutely awesome, we should be able to look at that evidence and say, oh, I bet it's proving this point. So sometimes looking at the evidence in isolation will tell you whether your evidence is really as good as you think it is. So let's take a look. After Odysseus and his remaining crew escaped from the Cyclops Polyphemus, Odysseus became overly confident in his decisions. Despite his fellow crewmates warning him by saying, "That's reckless, why would you irritate that savage?" Odysseus took it upon himself to mock Polyphemus and state, "Tell them Odysseus destroyed your eye, a sacker of cities, Laertes' son, a man from Ithaca." We have the same options here. We can say it is excelling, it is correct, it is wrong, or it is missing. Clearly not missing. So we're left with excelling, correct, or wrong. So I do see some little problems here. You have a period before the citation. Don't do that. So that's a little wrong there, but I am seeing that that's correctly done up here. And I hate to say something is wrong and take a huge chunk of points when I can see that it is done right earlier in the paper. So it's likely that's just a slip. Let's see. This is not actually embedded. So an embedded quote would have a little tiny fragment inside the student's own words instead of having this sentence that's kind of set off. So despite his fellow crewmates warning him that he was, oh, I am not on home row. That he was reckless and might irritate the savage, Odysseus took it upon himself to mock Polyphemus. So this would definitely be stronger, just making those little changes. However, this person does have a correct, what's called formal quote, meaning that you have an introductory phrase, you have a comma separating the formal quote from the student words, and you then have like a complete sentence that's pulled out. It's not excelling because you don't have that good embedding, but I would say I would probably give this a correct. I might take a point off because of that period, but I certainly wouldn't put it all the way down to incorrect. So I would probably land this at correct. So let's take a look at another one. While Athena was explaining to her father why Odysseus should be allowed to return home, she claimed that Odysseus, please capitalize names, drives me crazy. She claimed that Odysseus was an ill-fated man, for he was the one who stuck on an island surrounded by the sea, not being able to get back to family and friends. As seductive as Calypso was, Odysseus still yearned to see even the smoke rise from his native land, and would much rather wish for death than to stay there any longer. Oh, that is nice. First of all, I can immediately tell that she's trying to prove Odysseus is loyal. So the fact that that is just bang on clear from the evidence really shows that this is well chosen evidence. I also love the embedding. So when I read it out loud, the sentence just flows together. And unless you're looking, you don't see where the quotes are. So this is absolutely beautifully embedded. I would love to give this an excelling rank. I would, because logic wise, man, it's there. And then I see this. Aw, dang it. Cite at the end of the sentence, not at the end of the quote. So I can't really say it's excelling because there is a skill that they haven't mastered, and that breaks my heart because in terms of embedding, in terms of logic, it's such a beautiful piece of evidence. Okay, let's do one or two more, and then I'm going to turn you loose, and you're going to have to determine correctly what the grade would be. When everyone thought Odysseus wasn't coming back, suitors pressured her to marry them. However, this means Telemachus would have to be killed, so he did not have any power. So every night Penelope unraveled her weaving just so she wouldn't be forced to marry a suitor and threaten Telemachus's life. She did this out of consideration for his impending future. Okay, it's very clear that this is trying to prove that Penelope is very intelligent. She's very strategic, and I think it does a good job of doing that. Now, it has no embedded quotes. That's not a fatal flaw that means that you're going to automatically fail, because I do see specific evidence in here. However, is it great that I have no quotes? No, it's not great. So we have a weakness there that even if I were to give this correct, I would probably take a point or two off. So it wouldn't get full credit for being correct without embedded quotes. However, it has a bigger flaw, one that means that this cannot get anything more than incorrect. What is the huge flaw that means that these facts have to fail? Hopefully, what you just said is there are no citations. Every sentence that contains evidence, and that means specific facts from the reading, has to be cited. And without those citations, that evidence is incorrect. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Instead of standing up to the suitors who were in her home, Penelope decides to sit back and let everything unfold while she resorted to trickery and unraveled her weaving every night to stall a committed marriage with a suitor. This time I'm going to make you tell me, what is it? Is it excelling? Is it correct? Is it incorrect? Okay, we can rule out incorrect immediately because I see solid embedding of quotes, although I would like to get rid of that space there. So absolutely, that's nice. I can tell that this is trying to prove that she's, again, strategic, smart, that she's handling the household. So it definitely is proving a point. It's correctly embedded. And because that really does prove its point very, very well, and it's well chosen to prove that she's kind of strategic and tricky, I would say this is probably excelling. Okay, let's look at this one. Telemachus decided to call a council to confront the suitors and set out with a ship to find news of his father. So we're probably looking for that he has changed, that he's more confident, that he's becoming confrontational. So, what do you think? Definitely not wrong. I can tell what it's proving, but I am really stuck between whether this would be excelling or whether this would be correct. And the difference is going to be, Does this person pull out the very best information to prove that he is kind of stepping up and confronting the suitors? I think there's some better examples in there, so I would probably go with correct, probably, but this one is a tough one to call. So could be either. Okay, luckily there's only 1 point difference, so we don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, next one. Rather than having chosen a suitor over these 20 years, she told the suitors that she'd choose among them after she finishes her weaving as a way to represent her loyalty, the noun form of loyal, in order to represent her loyalty to Odysseus. She is tricking them, although not really, because they already know she unravels it every night. Okay, what do you think? Well chosen example. It's definitely your best example of trickery from Penelope. Well embedded quotes. A little bit odd here because you're kind of saying, hey, she's tricky. She's tricky. Ha! Kidding. Not really. So again, I'm really kind of stuck between excelling because it has all of the bits there. It really logically proves a point. It's well embedded. It's well cited. But then you have that logical, it's almost like a lawyer standing up and going, my client is innocent. My client is innocent. But, not really. Probably they did something, but my client is innocent. So you've got that little logical slip here. That again makes this, it's a really hard line to pull, and I would probably come down on the side of correct, just because undoing your own logic, not great. Okay. Last one, after being one of the reasons Odysseus had been away from home for several years, Poseidon still held a grudge at him for the repugnant things he did to his son Polyphemus. So as Odysseus finally started his journey home, Poseidon created a huge storm, knocking him into the sea and smashing his ship to bits, forcing Odysseus to float, and actually that's a fragment. ING words are danglies. They start danglies. They're not a complete sentence by themselves. He forces Odysseus to float by us land and walk there battered and half drowned. Okay, yeah, I know. They copied a word wrong. Not the end of the universe. But the rest, what are you going to say? Excelling? Because we do have some really nice embedded quotes there. Correct, meaning, okay, they did a good job, but we got some slippy slideys, not perfect. Or incorrect. What are you giving it? Okay, hopefully you spotted that there is only one grade possible here. Incorrect. Every sentence that has evidence must be cited. Period, full stop, the end. There is no exception on that rule. Okay, so let us now look at commentary. I have to say, you guys grabbed commentary very, very quickly, much more quickly than classes usually do. So let's take a look. Odysseus is a very family-oriented person. I'm giving you the claim so that you can know if we came back to it. Because remember, the two things I'm looking for are a good reasoning type. So I see that comparison. I see that contrast. And then I'm going to look for, does it come back to that claim and really prove it? If Odysseus wasn't as family-oriented as he was, he could have simply given up and married Calypso, but he kept his wife and family in mind. So you even know what the facts were. So there's a strong tie there to facts. He had journeyed everywhere, once let go from Calypso, getting help just to go home to his family. Now that's a problem because now we're starting to get into facts, and you don't want to be giving a lot of facts. You want the sentence to be focused on opinion. You see here, you've got a little bit of fact, but the fact is brought up only to focus on that contrast. Most of this is, in fact, more in the realm of opinion, but this is a complete sentence of fact. So, quite frankly, that shouldn't be there, okay? The fact that he never gave up is very interesting because of all the problems he faced on his way to get home. Okay, so what would this get? Oh, in case you haven't noticed, grading is not always easy. I am really stuck here between excelling and correct because these sentences are definitely excelling. And if all I had were the first and the last sentence, I would say excelling, done. This kind of slips away a little bit and starts getting a little too factual. So, I think this time I would probably give it excelling just because you guys are learning. And so slipping a fact in the middle, I can't say that's not an unusual problem. However, I would be so much more happy with that. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Odysseus is tired of being away from home. This is similar to a soldier wanting to come home, but is unable to because they have to fulfill their duty as a benefactor to their country. The one thing Odysseus wants more than anything is to be home with his family, but he can't due to the circumstances he's in. Okay, it's clearly not wrong. It is clearly a comparison. It is clearly, focused on tired of being away from home. So the question is it excelling or is it correct? Okay, the thing with comparison, those are really called analogies. And comparisons should really make me look at things in a new way and go, wow, oh my gosh, yeah, I really connect with that. This is not specific enough for me to really sort of emotionally connect with it. So could it be, sure, we could say something like, this is similar to an American soldier stuck in Iraq who desperately wants to come home for the holidays and connect with their people, or connect with their family and watch their children open Christmas presents under the tree. But they believe that they have a duty to protect American freedoms. And so they stay away. And that's exactly what Odysseus is doing. He wants to be home with his family, but his feeling of obligation means that he has to choose the war over them. Now, the minute we get more detailed, hopefully you can also see, you'd have to be really careful because I wandered a little tired of being away from home. So you would have to say it a little bit differently and focus more on the being tired away from home. But I would say right now, this is correct 100%. It just doesn't have like the kick that I would require to really give it extra credit. So it's going to be correct, not excelling. Okay. Athena is a very keen goddess. An oblivious goddess wouldn't have used the opportunity to take advantage of the absence of Poseidon in the congregation of gods and goddesses. Well, it's time for you to start telling me some stuff. First of all, do we have a clear type of reasoning, either comparison or contrast? Yep, absolutely. It's contrast. An oblivious goddess wouldn't have done that. She did do it, so clearly she's not oblivious. Do you have a return to the topic of keen? Well, yeah, the opposite of that would be oblivious. The idea of taking advantage, that's very keen. Does this have enough emotional appeal and kick to give it extra credit? No, it does not. And that means this is going to get graded as a correct. Okay. Antinos does not take responsibility for his disrespectful actions towards Penelope and her home. Ooh, nice claim. So let's see if the commentary follows. If Antinos would have accepted that he was culpable, he wouldn't have brought up that Penelope had played tricks on the suitors. He would have admitted that his actions were ill-mannered, which would have prevented the men of Ithaca and Telemachus from arguing. Does it have a clear type of reasoning? Yep, contrast. I can see right there. Does it return to that idea of responsibility? Yep. Culpable about being responsible. Does it have enough emotional kick? Does it have enough development to be worth that extra credit point? If Antinos would have accepted, he wouldn't have brought it up. He would have admitted his actions were ill-mannered, which would have prevented them. I would say yes, because a student who was just correct would have stopped right here and would have said, whoop, I've done my job, I'm good. But you have this additional contrast that really develops it and kind of paints this picture of how the world would be different. So I would give this excelling. Okay, it's time to look at some entire arguments. Antinos was a very violent person. Antinos led the suitors and plotted an ambush. Telemachus and plotted an ambush against Telemachus so that he could take the throne of Ithaca. If Antinos was benign, then he never would have tried to give a surprise attack to Telemachus or even stay in Ithaca in dreams of marrying Queen Penelope. The black-hearted Antinos was hungry for power, and he had transfixed his eyes on Ithaca, showing no signs of showing sympathy, and led the suitors to try to kill Telemachus. Okay, clearly, do me a favor, like proofread out loud and make sure that everything is there. So let's start. Antinos was a very violent person, high, medium, or low. I shouldn't say that. Excelling, correct, or wrong. Because really that medium, correct, still gets an A. So is it an A? Is it a lower A? Or is it failing? Yep, that is correct. So it doesn't give me the richness of a how or a why, but I do see an opinion there. Facts. Excelling, correct, or wrong? That's correct. I don't see a lot of quote fragments. There is certainly more to show violence than just plotted an ambush. So I would like a little bit more richness there, but it is absolutely correct. Commentary. Excelling, correct, or wrong? Here's where I would say it is excelling because there's a lot of richness here. There's a lot of description here. Now, you don't want to go overboard. Longer is not always better, but this does a really good job of painting a picture of, exactly how things would have been different if he were more benign, if he were not as violent. And of course, strong setup for contrast. Let's do one more. First of all, some of you have these weird breaks. No, it's an argument. Make it all stick together. Okay, Penelope is still clinging to, you cling to something, you don't cling for something. Clinging to Odysseus's memory. He hasn't appeared, so has to be memory, after his disappearance. Even though Penelope told the suitors that she will choose a husband just as soon as she finished weaving, that's a big dangly. Dangly's attached to a sentence with a comma. She forgoes that and unraveled it every night as she can't bear to decide. If Penelope wasn't attached to Odysseus, she would have already picked a husband from one of the suitors. There wouldn't be chaos as egregious as in her household with what the suitors are causing, which shows how, dangly to main idea, which shows how fixated she is for Odysseus, even if there is disorder in her home. Oh, got a lot of danglies hanging off that one sentence. Make it clear with commas that you're going into a new dangly. Okay, so claim. Excelling, correct, wrong. I would say this is excelling. You've got that strong how. Okay, how is she clinging? Well, she's clinging to, because they could have just said Penelope is clingy or Penelope holds on to things, but you have a little bit more richness there saying how or why. So that really is excelling. I like that. Evidence. I'm looking at citation. I am looking at embedded quotes. I'm looking at the logic of it. How well does it support the idea of her really clinging to his memory. Yep, I would say this is excelling because I am seeing really well embedded evidence, the best evidence to choose that she is holding on, and it is correctly cited. So I would say because the best evidence is chosen logically, that's going to be excelling. Okay, commentary. Excelling? Maybe. There wouldn't be chaos as egregious as in her household. There's a little bit of awkwardness with the phrasing. I would like this if it were split up into a couple of sentences because you have a lot of danglies holding off of that one main idea line. So there wouldn't be as chaos as in her household. And then dangly with what the suitors are causing, dangly, which shows how fixated she is for Odysseus, dangly, even if there is disorder in her home. So there's a little bit of awkward phrasing in there. But overall, I would say this is really strong and it paints a strong picture of how things would be different if she wasn't attached. So I've got that strong contrast in there, and it definitely comes back to the idea of clinging. So I would probably give this an excelling. Maybe not if I were aggravated at some of the awkwardness in the grammar, but I think I would give it an excelling. So hopefully you have a better understanding of what the grading means. I want you to go back and take a look at your argument. And if you need to change it, then you need to change it.